Emily thought she was buying an old burlap cowboy for $2, but instead she brought home a century-old curse. Trapped inside was Samuel, a man punished for his past by forces too cruel to forgive. Yet fate had one last twist. A quiet woman with a kind heart was all it took to break the spell. And wait until you see how this haunting story ends, with a turn that feels like justice finally finding its way. Emily Davis had never planned to stop at the little roadside antique shop. It sat on the edge of a dusty Texas highway, its crooked sign swinging lazily in the wind. Clearance today. Everything must go. She had passed it dozens of times on her way home from work at the diner, but this time, something made her pull over. Maybe it was the way the sun hit the cracked windows, glinting off old glass bottles and wooden crates. Or maybe it was the quiet. After a long shift filled with clattering plates and the constant murmur of customers, the silence seemed to call to her. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and time-worn fabric. Rows of shelves sagged under the weight of forgotten things. Chipped porcelain dolls, stacks of yellowed books, tarnished silver spoons no one had polished in years. Emily wandered slowly, her fingers trailing along cool surfaces, her mind wandering even further. Then she saw him. In the far corner, partially hidden behind a rack of moth-eaten coats, stood a figure. At first glance, she thought it was a mannequin. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a wide-brimmed cowboy hat tilted forward to obscure its face. But as her eyes adjusted, she realized it was no ordinary store display. The figure was made entirely of coarse burlap, stitched together in uneven patches. Long arms hung limply at its sides, the fingers ending in rough seams. It wore a frayed plaid shirt and faded jeans stuffed with what looked like straw. A faint ring of dust circled its boots, as if it hadn't been moved in years. Pinned to its chest was a small handwritten sign, $2. Emily stared for a long moment, unsure why her heart was beating faster. $2 for the cowboy, came a voice from behind her. She jumped slightly and turned to see the shopkeeper, a frail woman with silver hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes as pale as cloudy glass. Her lips curled in a thin smile. It's been here forever. No one wants it. Folks say it's creepy, the woman added with a shrug. But it doesn't bite. Emily gave a nervous laugh, though the sound didn't quite reach her eyes. I don't know. It's big. Big and silent. He'll keep you company, the shopkeeper said, her smile widening just a little too much. Emily hesitated. She didn't need it. She didn't even like it. But there was something oddly sad about the figure, something almost human in the way it seemed to lean slightly forward, as if waiting for her to decide. Against her better judgment, she pulled out her wallet. I'll take him, she said softly. The shopkeeper nodded as though she had expected this all along. Hope he doesn't scare you at night. Emily paused, frowning. What do you mean? But the woman had already turned away, humming faintly as she wrapped an old teacup in newspaper. Emily set the burlap cowboy in the corner of her small apartment, right beside the armchair where she spent most evenings curled up with a book. It felt strange, arranging him there like a piece of furniture. But once she stepped back, she couldn't deny that the empty corner looked less lonely now. She named him Sam. At first, it was a joke, something to make the quiet of her apartment feel less heavy. She found herself talking to him in passing. A casual, rough day at work, Sam, or think it'll rain tomorrow? It felt silly, but somehow comforting, like speaking to a pet or an old friend. For a few nights, everything seemed normal. Sam stood silently, his wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow across his stitched face. But then, Emily began to notice little things. Once, she returned from work and was sure his head was tilted slightly more to the side than before. Another time, she thought his hand rested closer to the armchair. She brushed it off as her imagination, blaming her fatigue from long shifts and late nights. But one evening, as she drifted into sleep, she heard it, a faint sound, so soft she wasn't sure if it was real. Emily! Her eyes snapped open. The apartment was dark, except for the pale glow of the streetlight filtering through the curtains. She held her breath, straining her ears. Nothing. Pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders, she turned over and shut her eyes. It must have been a dream. But just as sleep began to claim her again, the voice came once more, a hushed whisper barely above the sound of her own heartbeat. Emily! Her chest tightened. She bolted upright and flicked on the lamp. The room lit up in a warm circle of light. Sam was there, standing exactly where she had left him. Still. Silent. Emily laughed nervously, a thin sound that did little to calm her racing pulse. "You're losing it," she murmured to herself. But deep down, she wasn't sure she believed that. The whispers didn't stop after that night. Emily began hearing them at odd hours, just as she was drifting off to sleep or when she stepped out of the shower, the faintest echo of her name brushing against her ear like a passing breeze. Each time, she froze, holding her breath, her eyes darting to the corner where Sam stood. By day, he seemed harmless, a lifeless figure stitched from rough fabric, head tilted ever so slightly under the brim of his hat. But at night, the shadows gathered around him differently. His shape seemed heavier, his presence thicker, as though the air in the room changed when darkness fell. One evening, as rain drummed against the windows, Emily sat in her armchair staring at Sam. She told herself she was imagining it, that her overworked mind was playing tricks. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that his posture was different again. His head tilted further now, as if he were watching her more closely. She needed to know. With trembling hands, she grabbed the flashlight from her drawer and approached him. The beam of light swept over the coarse burlap, catching on loose threads and the faint outline of stitches crisscrossing his chest. She reached out, fingertips brushing against the rough fabric. It felt strangely warm. Emily pulled her hand back, her breath hitching. Fabric shouldn't hold warmth like that, not in a cold apartment. "Emily," the whisper was louder this time, definite. She staggered back, knocking over a small table. The sound of the lamp crashing to the floor filled the silence. Heart pounding, she forced herself to look up. Sam hadn't moved, but there was no denying it now. The voice came from him. "Help. Me." The words were soft, almost pleading. Emily's throat went dry. Her fingers tightened around the flashlight. She remembered the shopkeeper's smile, the way her cloudy eyes seemed to follow Emily as she left with the cowboy. "What are you?" she whispered. No answer, just the steady patter of rain and the thudding of her own heartbeat. Something inside her said she couldn't leave it alone. If there was even a chance that a human soul was trapped in this stitched shell, she had to do something. Against every instinct screaming at her to run, she grabbed a pair of scissors from the kitchen. Okay, just a little," she whispered to herself, more to calm her nerves than anything else. She snipped a seam on his chest. Straw fell out in small tufts, scattering across the hardwood floor. But then she saw it. Beneath the burlap, something pulsed faintly. A glow, soft and red, like the ember of a dying fire. It was a heart, a real, beating heart. Emily stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a cry. The voice came again, weaker now, fragile like a fading echo. "Set me free." Emily's hands trembled as she stared at the faint red glow pulsing beneath the burlap. It was impossible, yet the soft thump echoed in the stillness, like a weak heartbeat. "Set me free." The voice was barely a whisper now, but it held a desperate, almost pleading tone. Emily's chest tightened. Every instinct screamed for her to run, yet she couldn't leave, not when someone was asking for help. Grabbing the scissors, she stepped closer. The glow seemed to brighten, as though sensing her decision. Slowly, carefully, she snipped the thick black thread across his chest. One stitch, then another. The air grew warmer with every cut, the smell of hay replaced by something sweet, like spring flowers. On the final stitch, the figure shuddered. The burlap split, falling away in rough patches, until a man's shape emerged beneath. Strong features, tired eyes the color of a clear sky, and an expression of deep relief. "You're real," Emily whispered. He nodded weakly, his voice no more than a breath. "Thank you, Emily." Before she could speak, his form began to fade, light spilling from him like morning sunlight through cracks in a door. "Wait, don't go." But he only smiled. "I'm free now. So are you." When the glow faded, the corner was empty. On the floor lay his old cowboy hat. Emily picked it up slowly, her fingers tracing the brim. The room felt warmer somehow. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel so heavy.